Blessed love and peace. Couple joints. Addendum to the joint from earlier today about the same old topic. It's actually intended to be shared amidst the consideration shared earlier this evening. So here it is. Talking particularly about the powers of woman over man. But actually, first, referencing that scenario or referencing that situation concerning William H. Cosby, Bill Cosby, a number of years ago, of him supposedly drugging women with the date rape drug or whatever it is. And I say supposedly with a knowledge about how things work. It's a nasty thing. It's an atrocity. The occasions when men rape and commit violence and deception against women in that way. So it's a heinous thing. There's also an awareness of kinfolk of certain backgrounds with certain standing being positions of vulnerability and being targeted for things. So recognizing both of those scenarios, we want to optimize the well-being of all kinfolk involved. So that pertains to the sistren involved, that pertains to the brethren involved, that pertains to all. It's difficult to weigh in on malfeasances and accusations of malfeasances without being in a position of authority, or it's not a matter about being in a position of authority, because we are being in a position of basically enforcement of rulings, at least in an earthly, physical, direct, immediate sense. And so those entities that do possess or that do occupy those positions, knowing the corruption within those methodologies and those systems, it's difficult to provide one's opinion one way or another in such situations, which is a nasty thing for men particularly, because part of the value of a man is being able to protect the life and the well-being of kinfolk, and particularly women, and not just in his family and in his personal charge, but in his community. So when men are not, and that's black men, white men, all across the board, are precluded from doing that personally and collectively, and it's a challenging thing. So anyways, that's not to take away attention or whatever from any of the onus, but it's just matter. It's difficult to just categorically say one way or the other, because the majority of people abstain from investigating or hearing or interrogating witnesses and otherwise, and instead rely upon information from the kinfolk who are instigators, the media, and additionally. So to make an opinion one way or the other, it's actually erroneous and felonious. So all that being said, at the same time, people are hurting other people, and we have to address that. So we're accountable, but we are in feigned positions to do that. So anyways, that's the side note about that. But just that, I referenced that scenario, that situation, just because it's a common popular culture awareness, and people are charged with it. people, it's a charged topic. However, the point is this: what is recognized is that when men do have done that, what they call slipping a roofie, what is it? In a woman's drink or whatever, and making her either outright pass out unconscious, or so delirious as to be weakened, to be manipulated and molested by the man. So, anyways, it's a heinous thing. It's nasty. It's wrong, and there needs to be action accordingly to prevent it, and then to respond to it when it has happened. So that being said, I think it's very easy for people to recognize that it's wrong for a man taking advantage of a woman beyond her consent, um, to intoxicate her and to induce her into and against her will, particularly into being weakened so that he can make advances. That's heinous. It's wrong. When men do that, it's wrong when men intentionally get a woman drunk, even when she's drinking willfully, but guiding her into a point of intoxication to that point, some point where her defenses are weakened again. Even that, without even slipping a drug, we don't even have to use that example. Now I think about it, don't even have to use that example. Anytime a brethren intentionally get women drunk or intoxicated or whatever else, that's one of the techniques of pimps on the street. And additionally, when getting a woman and having her under her control, first enticing her with things that she enjoys, food, clothing, this and the other, and then knowing that if he asks her or solicits her to have sex with somebody else for money outright, she's going to refuse. She's strong in her resistance. So instead, either guide her into addiction to something like heroin or otherwise, or forcefully, like beating her and forcefully injecting her, or if she's like semi cooperating, but he wants her to be further like docile and obedient, forcefully drugging her. So it's a heinous thing. So there's that. Anyways, that being said, here's where I'm getting to with this. Here's basically where the point is. We're able to recognize that when men do that to women, and we recognize the atrocity, the heinousness of those acts. Here's the thing: to recognize how women do that to men, it doesn't. You don't need no drugs. You don't need no alcohol. You don't need no heroin. A woman by herself, being herself. That's how powerful and potent women are. That's how vulnerable and weak men are, and that's not an excuse. It's the nature though, and it's the facts. How women, just by being women, get men drunk and stupid and vulnerable. Don't need no roofie. Now, again, many people say, "Oh, men have to be strong. Men have to be disciplined." Yes. Well, how about women have to be strong? Don't go to the club. Don't go to the bar. Don't drink that alcohol. Don't be around hood kinfolk or otherwise known for these things. So that's across the board. The fact is, when women get men drunk just off the natural beauty and prowess of women, that's wrong too. And that's painful. That's harmful. I won't necessarily say it's atrocity, because there's a necessity of the attraction between men and women, but just to recognize that women literally get men drunk, and it's a multi-billion trillion dollar industry worldwide. Thirst trapping is one of those methodologies, or one of the terminologies utilized for that, or to describe that. So now, again, people say, well, yeah, but come on, men, and what kind of harm is that? Men, they should be disciplined. If they're not disciplined, they get what they're asking for, this and the other. So come on, that's fake. It's so pervasive. It's so levels. But here's like a mundane example of what we're talking about. Let's say there's a young brethren, 17, 18 years old, whatever, bright prospect or whatever, bookish, a virgin, uncomfortable with women, shy, awkward, um, easily enthralled, falling in love with women who just are nice to him or otherwise. So there's one particular, maybe he's a university, maybe he's a freshman or whatever else, and but at the same time he's a prospect. Like he's got high credentials, he's got high test scores and GPA and all this other type stuff. So his career prospects are high, very lucrative. And here's this young sister that he meets the previous semester, whatever, or just sees around the previous semester, and all of a sudden she's giving him attention. She comes up and says, "Ah, da 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 da," and asks him if he wants to go out that later that night, or maybe they've chatted each other up for a while, but then at some point, like somehow they're in a situation where it's just those two by themselves. Maybe it's early afternoon or whatever. Maybe it's right after AM class. But in this scenario, she has him alone and communicates an interest of having sex with him. And he's drunk off being with her and is very susceptible and vulnerable to her suggestion. And it may be that he has an exam later that afternoon. And so she's suggesting, to go to the beach or go to someplace away to spend the afternoon with her. She's leaving town the next day or later that week. This is the opportunity. All different types of scenarios. And so his mind is wheeling at that moment. It's like, can he blow off that? He's never blown off an exam or whatever else. He's been straight A's, everything else. But this is a once in a lifetime thing. And she's right. She's strong. She's in his head. She got him drunk. Just off her to the point where he blows off that exam. It might have been like the exam that makes the difference for a job placement, for that top job that he was in number one candidacy for. But now, after blowing off that one exam, because he spends in, and maybe he does consummate and everything else like that. That's inadvisable because marriage. But so it's not just a gimmick. It's not just a tease. Like she gives it up to be crass and nasty, but there it is. And he gives it up too because he didn't go to the exam. He doesn't have his doctor's slip to excuse him for his absence. And so maybe he can make it up, but maybe it's 10% off his grade. Well, he can take it. He can ace it anyways, 90%. But that 90% difference is enough for somebody else to get into that number one candidacy slot for that lucrative Ace job opportunity that summer or after graduation. And it just so happens that that other person in that position for that number one slot is not necessarily Cistern's boyfriend, because that would be too obvious. But maybe it's that Cistern's soror from another university vying for that same job. Or maybe it's the boyfriend of the soror at another university who's vying for that position. So the Cistern is solicited to seduce the young brethren away from his discipline and his dean. And in doing that, him relinquishing his position, advantage, candidacy for a lucrative opportunity that now somebody else has. And it just so happens that somebody else is affiliated with the crew of the seductress. So it works in different ways. The powers of woman over man. But it is a similar trope of drugging a man just off the sexual lures of a woman. And it's not just sexual. It's mental. It's heart. It's body. it's even spirit too. So anyways, that's a scenario, and there's like just so many different scenarios like that, different renderings of that. um, so that's just something to include within the joint shared earlier this afternoon, evening. Now on a different topic, just as we are at 2 a.m. in the a.m., 2 a.m. in the a.m., we are sharing this observance, actually experience. The experience is the surrealness of dreams, the continuity. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not synonymity, but something that means continuous. The continuous link and experience, the continuum between the dreaming and the wakeful state, and how we can be in the wakeful state and have memories and recollections and yearnings for the dreaming and from the dreaming. The consideration here, though, is being in the dreaming and interacting with other beings who are in the dreaming and have awareness of the waking state or the wakened state and intentionality. And there being a fluidity. People living with a recollection of the dreaming, and then people dreaming with a recollection and intentionality of the wakeful state. And that can be rather daunting. That can be very, very frightening for some kinfolk who just are accustomed to not having dreams or not thinking about it, or just perceiving it as two very distinct and unconnected, non-interacting phenomena. There's a perceived safety in that boundary. But for those who have an experience that is different, who have dreaming experience and are in that dreaming experience with a certain consciousness of the wakeful state, that can be trippy. And the dreaming is a whole nother phenomenon. There's like an infinity to the dreaming. There's an infinity within the wakeful state, but there's an infinity within the dreaming. Infinities upon infinities, because the dreaming is also strongly connected with the spirit world, the heavens, and otherwise, and further. And that has a significant influence on the wakeful state. So to interact with beings in the dreaming who are knowledgeable and intentional concerning the waking state, the wakeful state, again, discipline and cultivating discipline within the wakeful state to be further disciplined, having further continuity between the wakeful and the dreaming. There's a consideration of people having extremely drastic differences, being extremely impoverished in the wakeful state, having hardly any money, but in the dreaming state, being like amazing, teleporting, flying, doing all different types of powers in the dreaming state. And again, the dreams, there's an increasing proximity, or relationship, we should say, because some of the heavens is like very much within the dreaming. Meditation also cultivates a mindfulness and experience of the heavens as well. So for somebody in the wakeful state who's with less experience about that, it can be very daunting to experience dreaming, where kinfolk are actually conscientious about the wakeful state. And within the wakeful state are aware of what is dreamed beforehand. They're being a cipher accordingly. Because part of the scary thing is that in the wakeful state, in the the world that is perceived increasingly as finite, where people walk, there's gravity, there are limitations in life, strong, severe limitations within life. In the dreaming, it's different. There are fewer limitations or perceived limitations. That there are actually, well, there's a lesser experience of limitations in the dreaming. There are further capabilities, and then there are also further atrocities and nastities. We can talk about cannibalism, and Satanism, and all these other things that in the wakeful state seem just like imagination, or it's some distant land or whatever. In the dreaming state, it's like right there. So again, to be in the wakeful state and be aware of that continuum, that can be daunting for a novice. What is recognized, what is taught, what is shared is that there are things we can do. There's things that we do in the wakeful state that strengthen our literacy, our proficiency within the dreaming state. And that continuum, that moderation, that balance is very valuable. Because like I said, some people have very extremely rich and affluent lives in the wakeful state, but then when they try to go to sleep, it's terror. It's like near absolute hell, because they know they're going into a realm, into the dreaming, that they're very impoverished, they're very poor, and the experiences are very very vivid. So it's difficult to say, oh, it's just a dream. So point here is that there is often a large dichotomy between the severities of pain and pleasure, perhaps is one way of describing it. Again, where somebody can be very rich in the wakeful state, billionaire, whatever else, but in the dreaming, be extremely impoverished, even just by heart and by mind, to be at the whim and the vulnerability of others. And that provides the suggestions, the guidance of having some kind of moderation in life, and even ambitions concerning the heavenly and the dreaming, and additionally, so that there's a stronger continuity, a stronger continuum between a person's wakeful experience and a person's dreaming experience. That involves discipline, that involves deen, mitzvot, and further. One thing along those lines, I think about sharing something else concerning the dreaming, but at the moment I'm going to share this, Kabbalah. Here's a consideration about the wakeful state, and particularly the garden, the paradise, the experience of paradise. So the different traditions of the world have a number of different teachings about the experience of the garden. Many talk about a number of different types of gardens. There's like the immediate gardens of paradise, and additionally, with all these types of luxuries. But then there's also like higher heavens and higher levels of heaven, experiences of heaven, for the severely devout and disciplined people. And again, that's an earthly suggestion of hierarchy. And there are teachings within the many different traditions of the world that heaven truly exists beyond hierarchy, beyond subordination. So when we talk about like having lavish things in heaven, it's basically a carrot stick type of situation, because if somebody needs to like see like a greater reward in heaven, in order to be righteous in this life, that person has like training wheel discipline, meaning that the, the still some work to go on the path, and it's not. It is what it is. Now it's purposeful. It helps people. Many people need that kind of tangibility, and that hope, and that promise as motivation. So it's not a matter of knocking that, but just recognizing that when those things are described, all the food you can eat, all the healthiness you can eat, and always being fit, all the women you want, and this, that, and the other, to recognize that at the very least, that is a lower form of heaven or lower experience of heaven. Because truthfully, the true happiness, and additionally, is beyond those experiences. What's the point of having women if one is not procreating at that moment? What is the point of having all the luxurious foods, and additionally, when one doesn't even have to eat to live in heaven? So those things, again, are earthly lenses to motivate people towards learning the heavenly ways and being motivated to learn and practice heavenly ways, because that is legitimate. So one way of thinking about it and observing where the conditions are at this moment, the notion of the garden is extremely valuable and extremely beneficial. Beyond just a motivation about heaven, it is a primordial experience. It provides us with a reminder of where we come from and who we are, what life is, natural, the nature garden. So when encouraging people to learn and practice heavenly discipline, heavenly principles, the reference to the garden is beneficial. So would absolutely abstain from knocking that or criticizing that. That being said, here's this consideration. We've got interesting traffic patterns here at 2 a.m. Somebody making loop-de-loops in the parking lot right now. Like what I described, like in some ways doesn't sound that big of a deal, and at the same time, like doesn't seem real. What I'm concerned about is like trying to make sense of it. Like cats are communicating things, but it's very difficult to decipher specifically, which brings up another thing. It also goes back to the dreaming statement that I made, because what is aware, there is an awareness that kinfolk who are very literate, very articulate in the dreaming, can also be very silent in the wakeful state and try to communicate things in an indirect way, because just like there are predators in the wakeful state, there are predators in the dreaming that are very powerful. And so it's not even a matter about governments there being testimony or evidence about what people say. It's like, yo, just giving it voice, just even thinking about it. And again, the kinfolk might be one, like what I observe is that there's a lot of trying, and a lot of trying people isn't necessarily intended as an aggression, but it's like seeing if somebody can be trusted. And when somebody is seen as being secure, as being not afraid, and even then also benevolent and compassionate, even perhaps fair or just, like people come out, beings come out the woodwork to test that person to see if they can actually be trusted, to approach that person with protection. I'm not crying, it's just wiping eyes, and my eyes are red because it's 2 a.m. and second night with hardly any sleep. But people come out the woodwork, and for somebody like myself, even with a number of years of experience and everything else like that, it can be challenging because it's difficult to discern what the intentions are of people, whether they're aggressors or otherwise. And there's a lot of people who are very skillful in deceitfulness and duplicity and putting a nice front with all types of malevolent intentions. Again, this is life, so that's part of the challenge when observing these things, because we can feel, even when I've had a gun pointed at my head within the past year on the bus, I could feel like that cat. I could feel that cat's heart, the brethren's heart. And even though he's being loud and cussing at me and cursing me and threatening me with death, I could feel his heart. It's like he's not mad at me. Like he don't want that. And I'm not. That's not like you don't want these problems type of thing. I'm just like, yo, he's afflicted right now. He's dealing with demons, and he's like reacting to that. And so it's not like he's trying me. I mean, how would I put that? Because he was trying me, and it got to that point because after I wasn't responding to him, like just being just completely off the rocker. Then he's like, oh, this brethren just absorbs it. Oh, let me see what else he can absorb. At that point, it becomes a what up? Okay, now you're going too much. So anyways, I can feel very often the vibration, the heart, the spirit of kinfolk. Even when kinfolk are doing like dirt at that moment, it's like I know this kinfolk is what this kinfolk is about and what they truly want in life. This ain't it. And they want to do better, but at the same time they don't know how. They can't trust. If they pull up, like they become further susceptible to other predators who are lurking and waiting to grab those scraps that are left over. So, and when people see somebody who, like I said, who's confident, who's not fearful, or who minimizes fearfulness, and at the same time is compassionate, there's an interest of approaching, cooperating with, gaining support from, protection from such kinfolk. But at the same time, can't like just put everything out on the table, because it's not even a matter of there being surveillance or anything else like that. Like heaven and earth are witnessing. So, brethren and sistren, are wisely cautious concerning that. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but the point I'm getting to, back to the story of like the paradise and the garden, is this. If we recognize, when we recognize that we all come from an experience, a primordial experience of garden, whether that's immediately from creation, whether that's manifestation as spirit beings, celestial beings in this earthly realm at some point after creation or otherwise, or otherwise. We all come from an experience of garden. We all come from an experience of a natural paradise. So again, some of it is warm water, some of it's cool water, some of it is middle water, and otherwise. Consideration is for those of us that are taught about the primordial garden being that of creation, and us being guided to return into that experience of the natural paradise where the lion sits down with the lamb. And additionally, here's a consideration for those who recognize that, who subscribe to that belief. Here's a consideration. I'm part of that. For each of us to discern where we come from, like where we can most readily and furtherly identify where our ancestral roots emerge from the plants. Recent teachings reveal that too. So basically, again, a man finding where his primordial garden is, his natural paradise, whatever the characteristics of that are. At the same time, it's a matter of recognizing a man recognizing, and this is applicable for women as well, for sistren. But I'm just using the male vernacular at the moment. A man may recognize his primordial nature, where he finds his paradise, his peoples within that paradise. The consideration is how different that experience of paradise is from how kinfolk in the city life in Babylon are living at this moment. For example, how many people go on vacation, camping, island resorts, and otherwise to experience nature and further. It's a little bit of a faint example because there's further contrivances with that. However, it's an example of recognizing how nature is valued, how people grind and grind with a thought of eventually being at that retreat or being at that beach, being in the forest and communing with nature. It's a very strong motivational tool. The consideration is, and so it just shows how potent that experience of garden is, particularly paradise. And so recognizing that. Consideration is, what is life like in that natural paradise? Wherever that is, whether it's around the equator, like in Uganda, in the mountains of East Africa, whether it's in the fjords of Scandinavia or in the mountains of East Asia, wherever that primordial garden is, the plateau of Tibet, to identify the nature of that location, what life is like, what the life in the paradise is like. We can call it a paradise, island paradise. So does that mean there's agriculture? Do you have to work the land, do physical labor, or is it just a matter of like going and picking fruit from a tree every year round because it grows year round? Whatever that is, there's likely guarantee that it looks very different from what world civilization is doing at this moment, what the cities of the world are doing at this moment. And the paradox, the guidance, the miracle, the rub of it is that in order to experience that garden, that paradise, it requires letting go of the trappings and the advantages, the technology, the conveniences of city life, Babylon, in order to live congruently with the nature and conditions of the garden. Plain and simple. If the garden paradise is one where like we just chill out and just like be one with nature, if that's what we recognize as paradise, to also recognize how distant the standard life is today in Babylon, in the city life, how it's not a natural paradise. And in order to experience that natural paradise, it involves letting go of the things in civilization, in the city life, that take one away from the natural paradise and that peace and that tranquility. So that's a consideration again, just as somewhat of a wake-up call, a dream-up call, whatever. We are in garden up, push-back mode. Garden up meaning cultivating our experience of garden exactly where we are. Considering things like an eternal flame, how does that work? How do we do that? Particularly given where the tool situation is at this moment. But anyway, garden experience. What is that life, and how congruent is that life with city life? And what of city life needs to be let go of in order to experience garden life, the paradise? That's some of what we share. There was something else I was talking about as a side note a few moments ago. You can already see the fatigue level is high. Late, tired, fatigued, didn't get much sleep the night before him. So I'm talking and I'm going in and out of sleep whilst I'm talking. Yo, I'm sleeping here. Anyway. So I was talking about the dreaming before, and I was talking about the surreal experience. I'm going to share this story. Whilst being on this topic, I'm going to share this story. I'm very careful about with whom I share this story, because it's a powerful story. It's like a heavy story, and it's not my power. I'm not conferring it. It's a power that exists beyond myself and beyond my control. Again, all thanks and praise the Most High. But anyways, this is what it is. There are numerous occasions where I've previously died in dreams, and it's a tenacious thing. And what the implications of that are within the wakeful state, that's a topic for further conversation. But that's just actuality. That's happened to me since a long time ago. Won't get into all the details. And the first time I experienced that, extremely traumatic, very young. And it does have implications in the wakeful state. So anyways, point of that is to say this. In my younger days, well, that's less relevant. Here's what I'm saying at the moment. When I'm graduating from law school 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, it's in my wakeful state. It's a very difficult time. I'm being failed in a class that requires me to stay an extra semester. Disagreement with professors. Basically, what had happened was, so dealing with that situation, dealing with all my friends that I built relationships with over the past 3 years, graduating at that moment and continuing on to jobs, and even further, what is troubling is going on to jobs that are very lucrative, high paying, high rewards, but at the same time are promulgating a law that dehumanizes myself, my kinfolk, my ancestors. So, and I'm not participating in that. I'm not taking the bar. I'm not practicing the U.S. Constitution, but that's what we're there for past 3 years. So it's very it's somewhat implausible or unfounded to expect kinfolk to go through those 3 years like I do, and then not reap the benefits and the pragmatic necessities that are provided from playing that role. And that's understood, that scene, but at the same time is very frustrating. So that's the scene. That spring semester, I failed a class. No, I was failed in a class on false premises, false pretenses. So there's that. Not practicing law, don't have things lined up very specifically in terms of livelihood or otherwise after law school. And then whilst I'm staying through the summer into the autumn to complete an autumn term, many of my friends are going off into different places around the country, around the continent, even the world, to live that life. So all of that is to say that at that point, I began having a series of dreams, recurring dreams of being killed, and it's like my kinfolk, that my colleagues, my friends at law school, like forsaking me and like agreeing in order to like get some of those benefits. In order to do so, you gotta like treat so and so as if he's dead. Like, don't talk to him ever again in life. And that manifesting in the dreamful state of people actually killing me. And it was a very frequent occurring thing. And I'm smoking a lot of herb during those times, and additionally, so there are all different types of influences. However, that is very distinct, and I could feel the continuity between the dreaming experience and the wakeful experience. The betrayals, the frustrations in the dreaming, the insecurity, the fear. Like, it's not a pleasant thing to dream, to experience that dream of that type of violence. So just being reconciled with that, being frustrated, but trying not to be too judgmental and condemning of my kinfolk who go on that path. So that's the situation. It would be I remember a number of different types of dreams. So just being in a spot, and all of a sudden, here come these terrorists or whatever. And this was at the point of, actually, this was right before the 11th of September, and then afterwards as well. But just being in a comparatively quiet, calm, tranquil kind of setting, and all of a sudden, here comes violence and like assassinations in the dreaming. So is it traumatic? Anyways, that was a recurring dream during that period. I haven't had it too tough since then. Had it at the refugee camp, to be honest, just a couple years ago. And that was very trippy because it was a very also stressing times, and that's something, dreams can be further vivid during times of stress. But I felt very stressed at that time, and experiencing not hostilities, but like lightweight aggressions about along the lines of not tribalism, but nationalism, somewhat religious boundaries or borders or otherwise. So those are the conditions for that semester of having those dreams. Now, at the same time that I'm having those dreams, I'm also having another series of dreams. In this series of dreams, and this was even before, definitely before I graduated from law school, might be a number of years before that, but this was something that happens perhaps less frequently, but it was a recurring dream, and it was very specific. Again, the continuity of it is very strong. So this is the series of dreams that I have. The series of dreams, as the sirens pop off at 2 a.m. What traffic is there? Dreams. A series of dreams during that period. So, third semester, for a number of years, a brief number of years, leading through my spring semester, my third year. This was the other series of dreams. Again, way before the violent stuff, right before my first graduation. In the series of dreams, I would regularly see an actor who was very famous during the late 90s. Usually when I tell this story, I say who the person is, but at the moment, particularly because there's the intention of sharing this online, I've only shared this story in person with people. So because this is being put on the internet streets, I'm going to do my best to stay away from names. It may be evident by my description, however, I'm just intending to stay away from names. Here we go. I had a series of dreams, and the dreams would be that I would be at different locations, walking through a hallway at a hotel or someplace else. And I would see this male celebrity with a young, attractive female. And one of the reputations of this male celebrity is him always being in the company of a very attractive woman. So in these dreams, that's what it would be. I'd be walking down a hallway, and he'd be walking with a very attractive young woman, and getting ready to go into a room with her. And so I'd be like, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing?" And he kind of just be that kind of polite kind of, "Hey, okay, bugger off." But we don't talk in my dreams. We communicate in an experience beyond language and words. But the basic gist of it would be like I'm saying, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening?" And he'd be like, "How you doing? Okay, that's enough." And then that would be pretty much it for a number of weeks until recently. Oh, actually, no. Before I fast forward all that, that was the situation over 20 years ago. I'm going in and out of sleep as I'm saying this at the moment, if you can tell. So this was an ongoing theme of me seeing him being with an attractive woman, always like going into some private room that just appears in the dream, or that was always there, but now it's being utilized. That's the suggestion, but it's not necessarily actuality. Anyway, I would have this series of dreams. And in the dreams, I would talk with this actor and his crew of actors, who altogether had one of the most popular television shows at that moment, of over 2 million views worldwide each week. That might not seem like a lot, but during those days, that's huge. So I have these recurring dreams in those situations, and it being communicated about me being privileged to be in that setting, and otherwise I'm just like being young. I'm like, yeah, whatever, pass the salt. So in these dreams, they would go another step and would start calling out the young brethren about who his parents are, who his grandparents are on his far side, what's his pedigree and lineage and everything else like that. So that's the scene. I would see the actor. He'd be with a woman. The other actors would be absent, and it would be just myself and the actor at that moment. And after like repeatedly interacting with it, crossing paths in the dreaming, eventually the actor kind of relented, because there was still this air of celebrity and distinction and segregation even within the dreaming. But at some point the actor would relent, and he would be like, okay, I've seen you enough, I've seen you multiple times, like, what are you about, what do you want? And I would share some ideas for his show. His show, like I might have mentioned before, it was like the #1 show in the country at that time. It was a sitcom with a small core regular cast, and then a lot of extras filmed when occasion calls for it. I gotta concentrate because I'm sleeping. Here's the point. In these series of dreams, I would share with the celebrity idea for his sitcom. And after seeing, like, interacting so often in the dream, eventually, like, we would have extended conversations. And in those conversations, I shared with him this idea. And the basic idea was that, like, I would play a character on his sitcom, and his sitcom was an intellectual, was like the most popular TV show on TV show on TV. And part of the style of the sitcom would be that like there would be special guests or whatever who would like play a special role, and it would oftentimes be like a subtle, tacit type of thing. And it would be like an inside joke to the audience and to like the core members. But anyways, I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm trying to remember what I'm talking about whilst I'm trying to say it. So it was that was the type of humor. There was symbolism, and like a character would represent something, and it would be very subtle. But once the audience would see how it played out, it would be noticeable. So that was somewhat of the idea that I share with this actor. And the idea is this: that I would play a character, and that character would be basically a representation, a metaphor for death. But it wouldn't be so obvious. It would just be like something that people pick up on, the audience would pick up on. And basically, how it plays out is that like this actor would introduce me to his associates, and the associates would like at first be very nice and cordial initially, but eventually, like the associates would be further fearful of me without like explaining why that was. And so basically, it would play out like I'd be at like a house party, whatever that somebody was throwing, and then the actor introduces me, and so I just sit there, and everybody just kind of gets still and like fearful and like paralyzed. Um, and eventually it wears off, and then like people relax a little bit further, but at the same time, I'm still being this very um, ubiquitous anomaly. I'm not socializing, I'm not talking to people, whatever. I'm just standing there, not threatening, not menacing, not eyeballing people, just standing there. And the humor of it, or whatever, the nuance is that um, the character I play is a representation of death. And the reason why everybody's so scared doesn't want to talk to me is because they don't want to get close to it. And that would be the humor. The character would bring in this friend who is very quiet and awkward, and but at the same time not not aggressive, and not too presuming or otherwise. But people would and it would be like seeing how the other characters would respond to this particular character, and that's the human. How much that's the humor, and how much the audience would be able to pick up on all of that. It's very simple, to be honest, comparatively basic, but that's the gist of it. So the actor likes that idea. He says, "Oh, that's funny. Okay, yeah, it's kind of like morbid, but at the same time, like that's what our show is." I see that kind of works. That's a nice idea. Okay, yeah, you play that. You can play the guest role or whatever else. So we talk again through a series of dreams over a couple of years. Like it gets to that point of like him like genuinely having congeniality, having like a liking, like having a respect and appreciation for who I am, because I shared some ideas along those lines. So he gets to the point where, and this isn't the dreaming over a series of dreams, he gets to the point of introducing me to the crew. Like there were a core of 4 characters, 4 actors in the sitcom that were the main characters, and pretty much everybody else was like a role player. So he introduces me to the other characters. And when he introduces me to the other characters start to get quiet, and uncomfortable. And I become frustrated because I'm like, why is it like this? Why don't I just like act normal? So he introduces me to his other cast mates, and at one point he's like, okay, let's have a sit down talk. Let's iron the details of this project, and let's get it done. So I'm invited to join the crew um, to sit on at a university campus. Nice environment, trees, grass. And so the scene is that we're sitting on like a blanket out in the field, or the campus quad or field or whatever. And we're having this conversation about a TV show and how it works and everything. And even though the actor, after a while, starts to be further like appreciative of me, his castmates are off rip averse to me, and don't and abstain from ever wanting to like consider the merits that I share. Just racist, classist, xenophobic, whatever. It is what it is. And eventually, how it is explained is that because the other actors don't have that same kind of appreciation for me, the other actors don't want me on the show, and kind of like outvote, outveto, or whatever. The main actor who does appreciate my work and what I bring to the table. So by the time I get invited to this setting of being out on the campus, on the tablecloth, on the grass, when I arrive at that scene in the dream, the friends get, like I said, quiet, still, uncomfortable, and but at the same time, like deferring to the main actor and accepting me just reluctantly. So as we're sitting there on the cloth on the campus, the grass of the campus, we start talking about the show idea, and after sharing that show idea again, the other actors communicate appreciation for it, but then what they suggest is that instead of me play that role, somebody else should play that role. So I'm being like gaslighted, or I have to work on that definition of gaslight still. It's a bait and switch type of thing. So after sharing all the ideas and all the difficult work for a long time and building rapport, other members of the same group have strong aversions towards me and don't want me to be in that group. So, and they kind of like rewrite it, they manipulate whatever else. So then I'm informed of this, the updates. So as I'm arriving at the house party, a wee bit fashionably late, as I'm arriving, and we start talking about the show, then I start to receive the pimp talk about, well, yeah, you know, we're not so sure about this particular scene, this and the other, and we've kind of made a decision, or is basically what it is, but without being so explicit. The decision's been made for this character just to play this role here, and that's it. Basically, like another character would be playing the role that I was originally to play, about death and making people feel uncomfortable. And anyways, I'm going on. I'm sleeping whilst I'm doing this. I'm gonna get to the point and just wrap this up, God willing. So, anyways, it's just kind of like stealing the idea and then trying to like replace me, and then just dirty business. So when that happens, I get frustrated in the dreaming. All of this is in the dreaming at this point. I get frustrated in the dreaming, and I could see what's being done. It's like just the smooth pimp talk type of thing. And I get frustrated at that because how dare people like try to pull that on me, and otherwise. So all that being said, when I arrive at the campus, sit down, we talk for a while, and we start talking about the show. I prepare some notes and say I can write further if you solicit, rather than like responding to that one way or the other. The basic response is listed here. I say here, I'm pointing something, my eyes are closed. There's the attempt of taking the ideas that I share, utilizing them, but then not including me in the program or otherwise. It's kind of like being railroaded. And it's the smooth, oh, we just went into a different direction. And, we know there's going to be some disagreements or otherwise, but we're doing the best that we can, that type of thing, that type of rationale. So as I approach, saying again, as I approach the cloth, sit down, and this is being communicated to me, and I can see it's just pimp talk. I get up, I stand up, and I say, but I'm death. And like the other actors like, yeah, we know, but we're just thought about going in this other direction, particularly for this sake and this and the other. And I just repeat it again, but I'm black. And eventually, like, the discord approaches with the innuendos, overtures of making arrangements. So, anyways, the point, the humor of this is that when the show was trying to be like take the ideas and not credit myself for that, and me continuing in the dreaming sequence but proclaiming I'm such and such, it's a humor because the text is available, but I'm sleeping, y'all. I'm sleeping right now. So just let me sleep, get some rest. That's the humor. I'm life, and I share balance best as I can, just like everybody else. There are things within our control, there are things beyond our control. At this moment, one of the things that's beneficial to experience is sleep. So I'm just going to say all things praise the Most High, Elohim, blessed love and peace of Rastafari.